Welcome to Gore and the F Words, guys. In this episode today, I talk about my time at an amusement park outside Tampa, Florida, how stress-inducing, anxiety-inducing, and nerve-wracking it is, and how I process those feelings through tools I've learned through counseling and YouTube clips for how to process nervous system regulation and dysregulation, for how to process threats and stressors and properly associate them into their actual categories in order to go through things. 2 years ago, I went to an amusement park with my wife, and I went on no rides. I was too stressed, couldn't do it. And check out this episode today to hear when I went to Busch Gardens, did I go on rides? Did I not? Did I just sit off to the side and let my wife experience them? Check out the episode to see what I did. And I also go on to talk about things to do with the church, how things in the Christian corporate institution that is known as the church commonly has been stress-inducing, anxiety-inducing, and dysregulating to my nervous system, and how I've processed those things through those tools I've learned. The same tools that I apply to go in an amusement park, I've applied to interpersonal things, which usually actually interpersonal situations tend to be more, shall we say, stressful than non-interpersonal things and more threatening. So I just learned how to process that, and I talk about that this episode. And this episode brought to you by no one. It's brought to you by me, Gordo, the big guy in charge, bringing to you this episode to you from a studio in my office, from a little studio in our home, Abbotsford, BC. No one paid me for this episode. I ain't no corporate shill. I'm not just going to take money in order to talk about something. However, if you want to sponsor an episode, reach out, let me know. But I'm only going to ever do ads that I want to do. And if you pay me to talk about your product, I'll talk about it, all right? But I'll talk about my actual experience with it. I'm not just going to say, oh, here's a script, I'm going to read this. You can give me an outline. But if you ever want to sponsor an episode, just know that I'm going to say what I want about it, or maybe I'll make music about it. And I'll talk about it, but I'm not just going to be like, I love this thing if I don't love it. If I do love it, I will 100% say that. But yeah, this episode is brought to you by me, no one else. I ain't no corporate shill. This is episode number 3. I'm so happy to be bringing it to you from our little audio studio we have at our little house. This is really cool. So this is episode 3. I'm excited. I've been wanting to get this out for a while. I've been meaning to get it out for a while. And you know, I really get inspiration for episodes from a lot of different places, and there's lots of different topics I want to talk about. And what really came out and where this is stemming from is when we were in Florida last month, we went to an amusement park called Busch Gardens. There's like Busch Gardens, and there's a water park called Adventure Island. And when we were coming, we decided to book like a 2-day ticket and to go to both places while we were there. And water parks, I love water parks. We have one about 45 minutes away from our house that it's the kind of thing where it's like everyone down here has been to one in the lower mainland around Vancouver, BC, but you don't really know how good it is, I think, because everyone's been there. And then you go to one all the way across the continent outside of Tampa, Florida, and the one near our home is like pretty comparable. And having said that, we still had a great time at this one called Adventure Island. And then the next day or the following week, we went to an amusement park called Busch Gardens. Now, here's the deal, okay? I like water parks. I don't particularly like amusement parks. There was a couple of years ago, I was really stressed out by some life situations, and we went to an amusement park in Vancouver, and I didn't really go on any of the rides. I was just too stressed that I couldn't really, I didn't feel comfortable subjecting my body to like, I know you're like totally safe, but I didn't really feel like going through this like high stress and adding that to what was already going on for me. And so I went there and I just kind of hung out with everyone we were there with. It was my wife and I and a few friends, and I didn't go on any rides because I was just too stressed. And then last year, 2023, actually by Cultus Lake Water Slides, there's like a children's amusement park called Giggle Ridge. And it was actually super fun. And I was doing way better stress-wise. Like I'd done some things in my life, like going to counseling regularly and just worked on things in my own life, where going to this Giggle Ridge place, because some of the rides were like pretty epic. Like some were, as an adult, like not really scary, but they had one that brings you pretty high up and drops you. And I kind of conquered that day. And I was like, okay, like this wasn't that bad, you know? And one of the rides I have a hard time with is the swings that spin, and there's like chain links coming down, and it spins you, and you're just held in this little seat. And it might sound ridiculous, but I the first time I did that a few years ago, I had a hard time. And when we were at Giggle Ridge, I said, okay, I'm just gonna do it. And then when we went a few weeks later, we went to the main amusement park in Vancouver, Playland, and I just said, okay, I'm gonna do any ride, every ride my wife does, like I'm gonna do. And we started with one called the Elevator. It brings you up, it drops you, brings you, and it's like, and there's no one in line. So we went up it, and we're strapped in, and the guy's coming around to let us out. And my wife said, "Can we go again?" And he looks, sees no one's in line, and he's like, "Sure, just stay here." And we did it again, and it's just so terrifying. I find it. And so that day we went around, did all the rides, and had a good time. And then when we're coming to Busch Gardens, I was actually pretty stressed out, and I just have such a hard time breaking that feeling of anxiety and stress when it comes to these amusement park rides. Again, I like water parks. I think because you're you kind of go fast and you splash around. You don't really feel like you're falling, and that's where I'm finding I struggle is when I feel like I'm falling. For some reason, water parks feel the feeling is like faster but safer, kind of. And so when she said she wanted to go to Busch Gardens when we were in Florida, I was like, okay, I'm willing to go. And I'm stressed now because I feel obligated to go on some of these rides, or I feel like, I don't know, like wuss if I don't go on these rides. So leading up, I was actually feeling pretty like, yeah, stressed out and just trying to process where is this feeling coming from. And I kind of decided like a few days out, maybe a week out, I said, you know what? I'm 35. I'm a grown man. And if I don't want to go on rides, I don't have to go on rides, and I don't have to feel weird or bad about it. And so that's what I did. I just changed my mindset, and I said, I don't need to feel bad about not going on these rides. They're not for everyone. I can still go. I'll go on some rides if I feel like it. If I don't, then I just won't. And I'll just have a great time still. And we went to Adventure Island first, the water park. We had a really fun time. And there's one ride, one slide where you stand in this capsule and a door swings shut, this like clear door, and you stand on a platform, and then it has a hydraulic switch that takes the platform out from underneath you. And here's what's really funny is my wife loves the feeling of falling on amusement park rides, but when it comes to that one at a water park, she has the hardest time. It's too scary for her. And there was a different slide at the water park that was just like a normal tube, and you just sit in and go down. And it wasn't really that tall, but it has a steep vertical, like you feel like you're falling at one point. And I did that, and I thought, well, you know what? This is actually not that bad. I'm gonna go do that one now. And I went on this one where the floor drops out, and I just braced myself. I was like holding so tight, and it drops, and you kind of go like, oh, that wasn't that bad. It feels like it's funny. It felt like the scene in Interstellar where it's near the end of the movie, and Matthew McConaughey and Anne Hathaway are trying to ride close to the black hole to get a bunch of velocity so they can get to the third potentially habitable planet, but they need the velocity from the gravity of the black hole. And then there's a part where, Matthew McConaughey separates and falls into the black hole, and it goes it goes like really silent. And you can just hear him breathing. And that when that floor drops out from underneath you, that's what it reminded me of every time. I felt like Matthew McConaughey when he's dropping into that black hole. But it wasn't really scary for some reason. It just, maybe it's so fast and it happens so quick, you don't really register that feeling of falling. And so I did it like 5 times in a row just because I'm like, I want to do this. I want to reprogram my brain that this is not scary. And before we went, maybe even to Florida, I saw a clip on social media. I really wish I could remember who it was so I could give credit. But there's a podcast, and the clip was someone was talking about why amusement parks are good for kids. And he said that it's good for kids to learn that when there's something scary and something they're afraid of, and they go through that experience, they come out on the other side, and they're able to look back and recognize like that was scary, but I got through it and I'm okay now. And it can help neutralize that threat. And he said it can actually help kids as they grow up into adults to look at seemingly threatening scenarios. And threat can mean a lot of things. Like when you look at our nervous systems and how we're programmed, like we've been wired for so many years, like thousands of hundred millions of years, whatever you want to believe and put in there, but in fight or flight and in our nervous system responses. And then what's kind of funny nowadays is in this, like, I don't know, easy Western culture, we still have those same nervous system responses, but they're to different, seeming threats. And so instead of there being like a bear in the woods that you're trying to run away from to get back to your main camp, and you have flight and your stress response and you kick out all this adrenaline and run back. What happens today is we put that on our boss or our family member or the stranger in the car honking at us. But then we don't have that. We don't have that run, like that physical exertion to process that adrenaline and all those different hormones that come out to kind of finish the cycle. And we're kind of wired to, it's like our bodies are unable to really determine, like when it knows there's a threat, it's being told there's a threat from our senses. It has a hard, it can't really determine like, oh, that's a bear versus, oh, that's a boss, when there's like a different physical threat level. I mean, maybe your boss is like a bear, so maybe that's not fully true. But anyway, like that, our bodies have a hard time with that. And so he was saying in this clip that it's good for kids because it can help them learn. It can help them process threats and regulate better because they go through this scary thing. They're nervous, they're anxious, they're sensing a threat. They go through it and they come out on the other side well. And they can look back and say, oh, that was scary, but that wasn't dangerous. And maybe not everything that is scary is dangerous. Also, shout out to a movie. What is it? After Earth. It was really poorly received. Will Smith, M. Night Shyamalan movie from like 10 years ago. And he's talking to his kid and he says like, he said, fear isn't real. Fear is a response of the body. Danger is real. Like a dangerous situation can be very real and tangible, but fear is not. Fear is like our sometimes maybe willful reaction to a dangerous scenario. And now the one caveat to put on there, if we didn't have fear and stress responses and fight or flight nervous system responses, we would just die. We wouldn't be able to determine when there's a threat coming. But the point is to get proper regulation of our nervous systems for threats and non-threats. That's the like main thing of understanding nervous systems and processing these things and these experiences for kids on these rides. Or in my case, an adult on these rides. Because when we're coming up to this thing and I gave myself permission, I don't have to go on these things because I'm a grown adult. I'm a grown ass man. If I don't want to go on this ride, I'm not going to go on this ride. But at the same time, I want to challenge myself to do hard things. And one day when I have my own kids, I want to be able to show them like, hey, it's okay. We can do hard things. It's good to do hard things. It's fun. Sometimes it's not fun, but it can be worthwhile. And that I kind of had that tension, permitting myself to not go on these rides and wanting to challenge myself to go on these rides. And so we got to the day of, and my wife was asking, like, do you think you'll go on rides tomorrow or next week? And I said, well, every time she'd ask, I'd say, to be honest, I don't know. But I'm going to go and have a good time. And if I don't go on a ride, like, just know it's not out of anything negative. It's actually like a positive, I don't know, like process with myself and my body that if I don't go on, it's like good. And if I do go on, then also good. Both things are good. Neither are negative. That's a whole nother conversation. And so we got into Busch Gardens. We're on the drive there. I'm just kind of like processing. Am I going to do it? And I just kind of had recognized like, I don't know. And I don't care. I'm going to have a good day. And we got to Busch Gardens, we got in, and right at the entrance was a coaster. It was just like, it was kind of a archaeological dig themed coaster. And you get on, it pulls up and there's like two carts on one main cart. And the front cart has 4 people, 2 and 2. And the back cart has 4 people, 2 and 2. And it straps in over your waist. And it's just like a bar. And you kind of get on from the line. You can't really see where it's going. You just see where it comes out of and you get on. And there's another cart full cart in front of you, like, I don't know, 50 feet, 100 feet away. And it's like pulling ahead and there's a dead end. There's just a wall. And I was like, "Oh, where's this go?" And it stops. The one car in front of us stops and it shoots in the air. It looked pretty fast. It shot in the air, like the platform raised. And I just said, I don't normally swear, but I just said, "What the hell?" My wife started laughing. And so it brings you up. And then, I can't remember what happens after that point, but then the ride starts. And so what happens with these two carts on the main cart is they can spin independently. I think they're free spinning. So based on the weight of the people on the cart and their positions, it can spin differently. Like the ride said, a different ride every time because of that, because you hit the corners at different like facing angles. And honestly, like being strapped in from the waist, I find so hard. I because I don't feel very secure. If I don't feel secure and there's like feelings of falling, that is just such a challenge for me. And so we did the ride and I was like, okay, that was scary, but also kind of fun. Like, let's go to the next one. So we go to the next one and it looked scarier. It straps in from the top. I think it holds you from the top, and my wife wanted to go on the front. So I said, okay, let's go on the front. Like, I just was like, yeah, I'll just keep going as long as I feel comfortable. Oh, and there's this thing I learned from our dog trainer. Shout out Shady Tree Dog Training in Mission, BC. And he said, when you're training your dog and you have a high anxious dog, he said the chemical composition of anxiety and excitement are actually close, and that you can help rewire dogs' brains or bodies, that if they're anxious and they're sensing a threat, if you start playing with them, it can help rewire. They can associate that, and by threat, I mean like they're sensing a threat, but it's, as their owner and caregiver, it's not a threat. You want to help rewire and regulate those things. And he said, if you play with them, you can change the anxiety over time to excitement. So he said for himself, when he's feeling anxious about scenarios in real life, he'll outwardly say, "I'm excited." So I started this last year. We went to Playland last year, and there's a ride at Playland called the Beast. And I'm sitting there with my wife and this stranger, this like 12 or 13-year-old kid on my other side. And I said, "I'm excited," like over and over. And this kid like looked at me and he's like, "I'm excited too." Like, like I was so dumb for saying that. And so we're on these, and that's what I just would say the whole time is, "I'm excited." Oh, and I did this breathing thing. Shout out Andrew Huberman. He said to help regulate stressful experiences. I think he related it to a public speaking engagement. He said there's like these 3 breaths you can do. You do a full breath in with your nose, and then another breath once you're already full, really max out, and then a mouth breathe out. And you kind of pause, just let it empty itself. And you can do that a few times in a row. So I've tried that a few times in life. If I'm feeling nervous at my softball games, I'll do that. And it has a hard time kind of winding down. But I did when we're in line and we're just standing to get on these rides, I did find that breathing helpful. It helped. I would do it 3 or 4 times in a row and then say I'm excited. And it helped kind of rewire my anticipation. So we're on this ride. Fun fact, I've never been on a coaster that goes upside down before Busch Gardens, and I've never been on a coaster that hangs you from the top. And so we're getting in and we're sitting in the front, and I'm just saying, "I'm excited." I'm doing that breathing thing, and it takes you up the hill. And when it started, instead of going like straight down, it did like a curve. And so that one I actually had a fun time on because it was more about speed and not about falling. And I mean, it just spins you, does loop to loops. It did all this crazy stuff that it's so quick. You just have a hard time registering you're upside down. And we did it, and I got off and I was like, "Whoa, that was actually fun," I would say. And so it kind of like pumped me up for some of the other rides. I think we did. I'm going to forget the order. Not long after that one, there's one like at Playland in Vancouver, there's one called the Elevator, and the one in Busch Gardens has a similar one. So you sit in a seat and it's just like a giant pole, and you strap down from the top, clips in with like a seatbelt thing, and it brings you up and then drops you, and it's very high. So I was like, okay, I'll go on this. My wife loves those ones because she loves feeling like falling. So we're going up, and the higher it goes, I tense right up, and I just hold myself against the back and the front thing as tight as I can to just feel as secure as I can. And it's going up, and you couldn't see this from the bottom. You go to the top, and then when it's at the top, it pivots you. So you go from like sitting, looking outwards to like literally facing the ground, and the strap on your shoulders is what's holding you in. And that was my brain shuts off, my cognitive function shuts off. It's just self-preservation and hoping I'm not going to die right now. And it just drops so fast, and it drops you, and then it swings you outwards like this. And I got off, and I was like, I don't think I can do that again. So we got off, maybe we got food, and then we just kind of went about the day, and that was our process. We'd go to a ride. I'd like kind of eyeball it to hopefully know what to expect, and just say like, yeah, okay, I can get on this one. There's another fast one that I think it was just 2x2, um, and you sat in it, and I think it came down over top. And usually those ones I was like pretty good on. And so I just kept going on rides, that's what the day was mostly about, was just going on rides, getting as much in as we could. We got there at 9 in the morning, and we stayed till 8 p.m. at night. And we just went one coaster after one coaster after, there might have been other rides too. I honestly have a hard time remembering the full day, because there was like a decent amount of it that was basically fight or flight that I was just pushing myself to get through. And by the end of the day, there's one more coaster. Probably, it seems like the most well-known coaster that they're known for. It's a hybrid wood and steel coaster. And on their website had a bunch of awards, maybe the fastest or highest, maybe both, hybrid coaster, I think in North America. And the two we had done before that, there was one, and this one was interesting. You sit on it, it straps down from the top, and then there's like 3 layers of seats, 8 wide. So you have one line of 8 people. The next one behind it is up a bit more, and the third one back is up more. So you have pretty much an open view no matter what. So that one takes you up, and then it's going up the thing. It turns, and then it goes to the down, and it hangs you like that. And I was like, I hate this. And it just drops you. It does that twice. At a second one, it pulls up to it. It does it again. Oh man, I have a hard time with that. And then there was a launch coaster. You sit in it, and launch coaster just like it goes from 0 to whatever. Like, it doesn't need to slowly bring you up the hill to drop you. It just launches you. So it launched. How did it go? I think it launches up a little bit, up the front, and then it goes back to get more momentum, and it hangs you there, and then it goes, and you go like, it has basically 2 loops, and it just kind of goes back and forth on it a couple times. And one of the loops at the top, it spins, but it slows your spin, so you're being hung there by the shoulder strap thing. And I was like, oh man, I think that was the last, that might have been the last one we did. And then we're going to go on that hybrid one. And when we got to the hybrid one, I said, babe, I'm feeling, I think at that point it was 7 p.m. at night. So we've been there for 10 hours. And I said, I'm going to try, like, I'll go with you to the line, but I don't know if I'll go on it. Like and it had like such an intense drop down, like vertical. I said, I'm just feeling like maxed out, like just exhausted. It's so funny when you're at amusement parks. Like, I got a decent amount of steps in, not a ton, decent amount of sun, not a ton, but you spend a lot of your time just standing, waiting. And then, you might spend 45 minutes in line, an hour in line, and then like 2 to 4 minutes on a ride. Like, it's just such a weird way to use your day. And we got to that last one, and I could just feel my body just exhausted from, I think, going through all those things. I had my tracker on. And so for one of the rides, one of the coasters, I turned on the exercise tracker. So it tracks my heart rate consistently. And it's just like in zone 1, and it's just flat. And then it peaks. It goes up. I don't think it got through to like my maximum, but it just peaked into zones 2, 3, and 4. And then it came down. Like, it's pretty funny to see it on a heart rate tracker thing. And Yeah, essentially that's how I just went through the day was, I don't know. I guess like even though I'm 35 and I think maybe a lot of us have a lot of things set in terms of passions, hobbies, what we like to do when we are in our 30s and we're moving forward. But I don't know. I don't think anyone, maybe this isn't common, but I don't think anyone really wants to feel afraid of things that other people don't feel afraid of. Especially when mentally, cognitively, you can look and see like that's safe. If that was not safe, this amusement park would be closed. And so, in fact, it's probably safer to go on that ride than it is to go driving around my hometown. And there's like a lot of things similar to that, right? Like driving is not one of the most dangerous things, but driving on the open streets with people who are texting and drinking and doing whatever else is actually like relatively unsafe compared to things like flying and amusement parks. But I don't think like we can register that really well sometimes. And with some of these stressful things from a couple of years ago when I didn't go on any of those rides when I went to Playland, I just really wanted to. Because here's the thing: if I don't want to go on a ride and I am happy making that choice and not going on a ride, I am very happy making that decision for myself and staying there. But I know that time I went, a big reason that I wouldn't go on any of the rides was because I was stressed and I was learning more about my nervous system and that it wasn't regulating super well, and that it robbed me of some really good, great social interactions with friends and family. And I don't I don't want that to take place. Like life has ebbs and flows. We're gonna be more stressed out in this period and less stressed out in here. And I think what I'm learning is it's important to make sure that your body is processing and recognizing that stress well, because these things can come up in life that are not stressful. These things can come up in life that aren't really that they shouldn't be that they shouldn't induce that level of anxiety, but they do. And then the question goes into like, how do I regulate that? Like at some level, my body's been conditioned to process these threats in a way that leaves me feeling stressed out. But I can look at that amusement park ride and I can tell myself, well, that's not really a threat. And these other things that were stressing me out also, and here's the thing. Here's like a really big thing. Those stressful life situations did not get better or worse because I spent a whole day at Playland stressed out. Like that's the thing. If feeling stressed out was actually productive and effective towards these events, then I think I would have a leg to stand on for why I should stay in that state. But I knew, and I knew through a couple of different ways that these like stressful life things did not help or get help by being stressed out about them. And I think that's something I'm really trying to learn and process. In fact, probably some of my best times in life is when I have been not stressed out at other times that other people are stressed out. When I worked at a summer camp, there was a situation where we had these basically cast iron fireplaces to heat the cabins at these camps. And there was a staff member who placed two logs on top of the cast iron, and his shoes were wet, and he put his shoes on top of the logs to dry them out so they weren't touching. And we went up the property to get snack at the chapel, and then someone saw there's smoke coming out of that cabin. We all rushed down, and basically I was the only one that when we got there to like just be clear enough of in my headspace to grab a fire extinguisher and put it out, and then it was fine. And there's times like that in life where I'm like, okay, like why is like a fire something that doesn't really cause me a lot of stress, but interpersonal relationships do. When I worked at a church here in Abbotsford and I had the facilities in my portfolio, I was pretty chronically stressed out. There's a few contributing factors. One, our budget was really tight. we have a lot of finances to alleviate some of those uh, facility issues. The building was aging, some parts hadn't been updated in a long time, and that was tough. However, the tougher thing was managing the interpersonal relationships to those facility issues. So, someone out of the blue bringing up, we need to like fix this, we need to do that. But then we don't have money to do it. And I feel pressure from people to fulfill those things. And it's like, oh, something that typically would not cause me a lot of stress and pressure now is. And that's something I've been learning is interpersonal things can cause me more stress and anxiety than fires. It's so weird. And and so basically like something I'm working on is how do I give myself the tools? How do I give me, Gordo, me, my body tools to regulate these threats and non-threats? And there's a few different ways. I talked about a couple of them already. One, outwardly saying I'm excited. Two, this breath technique from Andrew Huberman, the Hubes, and then so that was like in the moment. Like, how do I address this in the moment? Because you can't necessarily use every regulation tool in the moment when there's a stressor or a threat right in front of you. And so when you back out and you look at what are habits I can work into my life to process these things. So one is I also do more breathing techniques. There's one called the Wim Hof breathing technique. And I'll give all credit to him. You can go on YouTube, like watch his videos, his guided Wim Hof breathing, because when it comes to the cycle, the fight or flight cycle, like you're at a non-stressed place and then there's a threat and it brings you up, oh, I recognize there's a threat. I need to escape or eliminate this. And a lot of times in Western culture, we don't have that sprint back to the camp and safety, that physical exertion to finish the cycle. And when it comes to like something my counselor referred me to is he said lots of times like not aggressive exercise, I don't know what that would be. Not excessive, but like rigorous exercise can help finish that cycle. He said something else that they're finding that's even more effective is breathing. And then he told me about Wim Hof breathing. And that's something a couple of years ago, I think after Playland, but when I didn't go on any of the rides, but before the Playland where I did go on the rides with my wife, I started using that Wim Hof breathing. And there's actually a scenario where we had a couple friends come over to our house and we are just catching up, and talk about how we're doing. And my buddy asked me how I was doing. And I just talked about where a couple things in our life were at, where some family things were, where some social things were. And after our friends left, we had plans to go to a different friend's house that night, but they left. And I felt really exhausted. And I just said, babe, I don't think I'm going to go to like the other friend's place. I'm just feeling pretty wiped, which is funny because we didn't really do much. We like ate, and then my buddy and I went to the garage and did a couple things. And I thought, oh, maybe, those interpersonal situations, talking about them so overtly kind of raised that threat level, because that when you look at your nervous system, there's a few different stages that you can fall into. There's like the regulated stage. What is it called? Polyvagal theory. There's a polyvagal theory for our nervous system stages, and there's regulated. And then basically there's like essentially what's known as fight or flight. And then there's this bottom one. And so this one, the second stage is like, you're tense, you're frustrated, and you're just kind of irritable to be around all the time. And then there's this third stage, which is like, I have no hope. I'm going to lie down in the fetal position, conserve all energy, and just hope I don't die. And I was like reflecting on that. My counselor told me about this too. And I thought, man, what if I'm just at that bottom stage? What if I'm just, I'm not actually exhausted, but talking about these challenging interpersonal issues with my buddy just kind of raised the threat level. So I said, actually, let me just do some breathing and just give me like 20 minutes to figure out if I want to go over to their house. And so I did Wim Hof and I finished and I was like, oh, I feel all of a sudden I don't feel exhausted. I feel at peace. Like, yeah, let's go over and hang out at their house. And it was such a almost shocking, like illustrative example of how important this stuff is. And it was like very cool to experience firsthand and gain like a bit more self-awareness that, hey, my exhaustion was coming from uh a totally different place than a lack of energy. And so that Wim Hof breathing is something that has been really crucial to help regularly regulate my nervous system. Because again, it's not about not feeling that way, like whether it's, ooh, fight or flight, like, I'm going to fight back at this monster beast that's trying to kill me, or, oh, I'm going to conserve all energy because it's all I can do. Like, those are things we've been wired with. Those are things like I would say God has given us to help us survive on earth. Like, some people say, like, we don't understand. The people alive today are descendants of the people thousands of years ago when humanity was like traversing the globe as hunter gatherers and these tribal beings. They, the people that we're descended from are the people who said, "Oh, that's scary. I'm not going over there." Right? Because the people that died were like, "Oh, it's not that scary." They couldn't properly regulate and assess the threats that were ahead of them. The people that did, or the people who are like, "Ooh, I'm fleeing. I'm anxious." Maybe it wouldn't be like the same thing exactly, but those are our descendants. And so, and again, in a lot of Western culture, and hey, there's definitely cultures and even pockets of this culture where there are more real physical threats that we have to deal with. And so our nervous system needs to process these threats accurately. And the problem is a lot of the times they don't. Like realistically, is someone honking at you from another car that you'll never see again? Is that really a threat? No. I mean, we've probably seen clips where someone gets out of their car and they're like getting into a fight. But if you don't antagonize those people with road rage, it literally won't affect you. So, and that's something kind of funny is we have the system in our body that that is there to process threats. It's there to help us survive. And in Western culture, a lot of our threats are like interpersonal conflicts. So how do we process that? So yeah, like I said, breathing regularly kind of helps ensure that my nervous system is properly regulated. Rigorous exercise, kind of simulating that fleeing back to camp, helps me process, helps my nervous system process any events from the last couple of days. And I think also like proper sleep and proper food are also things that always kind of top of my mind, top of my list to kind of keep in order, like in order to help fuel our body properly. I think proper sleep for sure and proper food are like huge things. So yeah, those are kind of the tools that I use to help my nervous system regulate in the moment and on a more general level. And I think the thing is too, like I kind of have two people on my shoulder. Like on this shoulder, sometimes is David Goggins saying like get hard, push through, do tough things. And I need to hear that sometimes. And then on this shoulder, would be someone who would even be an example, like maybe I guess Brian Johnson, like the I'm gonna live forever dude, because he was talking about motivating people, and he said if I had a gym and I was motivating people with signs on the wall, I'd say, "Good job, you're here." And he said like he's like you can't really just force through depression. Like the thing is, yeah, some people need to hear like get hard, tough through it. Some people just they're depressed and there's like all they're doing is surviving is them being hard. And I kind of need both those sometimes. Like I kind of need permission to not go on rides, then I kind of need like a bit of like challenge to go on those rides. And Because I think also, like, if it's good for kids, I'm like, man, I gotta learn how to handle these interpersonal conflicts better. Like, if someone comes at me with some conflict, like, why does my heart have to start racing? Why do I have to feel intimidated? Like, what's the worst that's gonna happen? Are they gonna physically assault me? Mind you, that does happen. We need to recognize when that is going to happen. For me, it has not happened. For me, these interpersonal situations have not been a close threat to physical altercation, in which case, why do I need to feel stressed out about that right now? Something that's I've always been processing and figuring out is that I've been fearful of bosses. I'd be at a work situation. I'd be at work in a work situation. I'd be at work, and I used to work nights and shift work at a sawmill. And when that sawmill started, it was like, man, it wasn't like what was wrong. It was like what wasn't wrong with that place. So many things breaking down, so many issues. And so you'd be on night shift, especially on a weekend, like let's say it's Saturday night and something breaks down. And I would just feel all sorts of stress, worrying about what's my boss going to do when I talk to them. Yeah, but the thing is too, it wasn't really cognitive. Like it wasn't like, oh, I am thinking right now about what my boss is going to do when they find out this broke down for 4 hours tonight. It was more a feeling and just feeling stressed. And again, to go back a little bit, I think I feel validated if I feel stressed out about something. Like if I'm late to get somewhere, then I'll get stressed out. And I think because if the other person who might be waiting for me sees me stressed out, it'll validate my position of being late. Like they'll see, oh, he tried to get here really fast and maybe something came up, but it just never happens. At work the other day, a couple weeks ago, there was a meeting with some clients in another time zone. And I said, yeah, I could meet early, and start my day at 7:30. And the thing is, like, I have a number of things I try to do in the morning before I start work to be effective. And I made that choice thinking my boss is going to see and recognize, and has also, I should mention, never put any pressure to start my day earlier than is reasonable. And, but I kind of went to it thinking, oh, I'm going to get a pat on the back. Like, wow, you got up early for this. Good job. Um, it just didn't happen. And I was like, who did I even do that for? Like, why? Who saw that? Who thought I was awesome because I got up early to go to a meeting when I had full license and permission to just say, no, it doesn't work for me. We got to do it like a later time. But, there's all these things that kind of factor in from life. Some of them would be cognitive experiences. Some of them would be non-remembered cognitive experiences. And a lot of things go into our body regulating properly or dysregulating. And I think understanding, like, through a number of different things, like whether it's having a foster child with a dysregulated nervous system, having a rescue dog from Mexico with a dysregulated nervous system, being a person who at times has a dysregulated nervous system, has just helped me see like the need to properly regulate and figure this stuff out. Like, just because I think too, life is going to go by one way or another. I would rather go along with it like fairly, properly stressed at moments when it calls for it than not. Like I'm not gonna get to like hope 80s or 90s on my deathbed and someone's not gonna be like, oh man, like at least he was stressed out at 3 a.m. when the conveyor belt to the biosizer broke. Like at least he was stressed out when there was a conversation with one of the leaders in a denomination. Like no one's going to remember that. They're going to remember like how well you handle times of crisis, maybe. I mean, honestly, probably the biggest thing is people remember how you treated them. And that's something I always think about. So treat people well with respect. And anyway, I think that's just something I'm really trying to, because I think, and here's the thing, being a married man, my dysregulated nervous system does not only impact me. My dysregulated nervous system impacts my wife, my friends, And if I have children or foster children around, them. And it's not really fair to them. Like, for instance, that time we went to Playland 2022, we went with four other friends. Um, and it kept my wife from going on rides with her husband, and that's not fair to her. Um, and mind you, she didn't phrase it like she gave me all like validated, like, hey, it's okay if you don't go on these rides. I don't think I could even necessarily go back and change how I approach that. Like, you learn these things when you learn them, but it robbed her in a sense, and at times if I'm stressed out at home and distant emotionally, then it impacts her there too. And that's the thing. It's like, man, why carry that home if I have an awkward, let's say I have a tense conversation with someone at work, why bring that home into my relationships with other people? Now, again, you can't really just cognitively switch your nervous system on and off properly, like with thought. Maybe you can. I guess that's why I'm saying I'm excited instead of I'm anxious. But that's where things like breathing, rigorous exercise, and sleep are so important to help your body process those things. Like, I cannot express enough how important those things are. And to help with that, just because it's like frick, life is too short to worry about this stuff. Life is too short to let that precious hours you have in the afternoon, evening, after a day of work, to affect those loved ones around you. If anything should be opposite, your interactions with your loved ones, hopefully positive, hopefully life-giving. I know not everyone's home life is like that, but those things should fuel your interactions at work with other people. Here's an example for you. Um, I had, when I was working at a church here in Abbotsford, it was challenging for me because all your time is at the church. It's a hard time. It's a hard breaking into other sub communities in your community, subgroups, areas of your community, because you spend a lot of time at the church and you don't really have a lot of like relevant life experiences going on that other people can connect with at other groups around town. And it was, I think, just like the interpersonal pressure from people at the church, um, was very challenging, and it affected my relationship with my wife. And here's the thing: your experiences at church, if we should even call it church, your experiences at gatherings with other Christians, that's better. Gatherings with the church, that's better. Those things should build you up. So if you go out into other interactions with other people around your community, you should bring that positive social stuff into those groups. And here's what's kind of wacky. It was like the opposite, to be honest. Like, I have had more consistently positive social interactions with people around town, um, since I've kind of spent less time at an institutional Christian corporation, um, since I've stopped attending, those gatherings. I have more consistently positive, less consistently stressful, interactions with people around my community from exercise classes and social hangouts, than I did when I was working at a church and going there consistently. And that's like kind of a sad thing. And I mean, there was about a year we had a foster kid living with us, and sometimes you're just trying to get by, probably like anyone in life. And then other times you're trying to like go into these places and bring your best self to interact with other people in a lovely way and get some positive socialness back to you. And there's waves and ebbs and flows to all of it. But the thing is, I guess when I worked at a church, it was kind of consistently like down here. And it was just hard to break out of it to go to other places and get to know other people, which is kind of sad and weird. Um, but it just kind of seems to be the case when that's what you work, when that's your job, when that's your faith, when that's your income, when that's your volunteer. Cause it's kind of weird. It's like, you know, from employment standpoint, you can only get hired for a certain number of weeks, certain number of hours per week. But then, like, you are hoping a bunch of other people volunteer their time there. And so then you kind of feel obligated to maybe match the average volunteer hour at that place. But it's kind of the same thing. Like I said before, like, no one sees you when you're stressed. I think there were times when I was working there that I felt like, oh, I'm stressed out and I'm having a hard time with this, someone's going to see that and validate that and say, you're doing a really good job at this because you're, it's so weird. You're doing a really good job at this because you're stressed out. No one sees that. No one says that. Like, it's just a ridiculous premise that is in my brain sometimes. And so I just look back and I'm like, oh man, imagine if I just like didn't really care what people thought and was living my best life there. I think I would have been way more effective. And I think I would have been able to maybe integrate other places in our community better while I was working there. And I will say too that some people that were there were notably what would the word be? Notably challenging and stress inducing, and that's kind of the like, I guess what I would say, one issue about these corporations, these Christian institutional corporations that we call church, I don't call church, that people call church, is you get people who, because it's an institution, and to participate in that, the social side of this institution, there's like a list of rules with the institution of who can or cannot. And if you can mentally say Jesus is your Lord and a bunch of other things, then you get to participate. But the kind of the problem is it doesn't really do a good job of naturally vetting out people who can mentally assent to it, but spiritually have not really, spiritually have not, what would the word be? Not transferred. People who have not spiritually, uh, what is the word? People who have not spiritually, um, transformed into a Christian. Because becoming a Christian, like, when you take an institution, institutions have rules and policies and procedures, and we kind of take those things and we overlay them over a very spiritual experience, over a very spiritual thing. And the thing is, you have over here, you have the body of Christ, the biblical definition of the church, which is the group of Christians, the group of people in an area, in a geographical area, that truly have recognized Jesus as the Lord of their life. That's the church. And then over here, you have institutions and corporations that we call the church, but they're really just organizations registered with the government. They're corporations registered with the government that can issue tax receipts, and they have policies and procedures, which corporations always do. And they say, well, if you're a Christian, you have to do this. But the thing is, you can't really take like a physical or a corporate concept of a policy and overlay it over a spiritual entity of like the people who believe in Jesus as their Lord and Savior. And what happens is, in these institutions, you wind up with people who mentally conceive and assent to Jesus being their Lord, but the people that are actually like, not the people. What happens is, what byproduct is, people who mentally recognize Jesus as their Lord, but spiritually have not been transformed by the actual truth of that, participate. And then you get people in that scenario who are not Christians, spiritually are not Christians, but mentally and procedurally are Christians, and they're functioning in leadership, or they're just functioning in general, and they'll come up to you and say, I don't like that you did this way. And the problem too with working in that environment is you're mixing your faith and your income and your work. Work and income is probably the same, but not necessarily. You're mixing those things together. And so someone can come up and say, I don't think you did a good job with this. I don't even think in a normal job, that's a good way to handle someone who's not performing well. That's still just not very good. But people can say it. And then it's like, well, am I taking this according to my job, or am I taking this according to my faith? Well, it's blended together. So you take it in both of those things. And the thing with a relationship with God, the Christian God, is it's just between you and God. Like he's my father. He's my father. He's my creator. And I have a direct relationship with him. No one gets to say anything about that ever, but they do. And that's just something like being in that environment with those people speaking those things to you. And sometimes they're people that are Christians and they are also, like mean or not good people, I guess. what ends up happening is it's like just such a jarring experience, and it's something you have to learn to process and regulate to function normally. And I feel like something that happened was I've participated in these institutions and had really great experiences. I've participated in these institutions and had subpar experiences. I've seen like abuse take place in them too, spiritual leadership abuse. And what ends up happening is that stuff stays with you. And when you don't have a way to process these threats or these things that become threats, then you just become stressed out all the time. And then I think part of you feels like, I don't know what to do with this. Maybe someone will see it and be like, hey, good job being stressed. A plus. But no one does. It just leaves you with a crappy weekend with your wife because you're not present and you're not functioning at where you should be. And I think that's just something as I've gone on the last few years, it's just like, how can I be my best self? And the thing is too, being your best self might just be getting out of bed. Being your best self might just be eating. It might just be going for a walk. Like we kind of say, what's my best self? Well, it's someone who got up at 5 a.m. and did breath work and went for a weightlifting session and then went to spin class after and then made a whole food breakfast and then stayed away from coffee and then got to work like perfectly on time or even early. They were the most effective they could have been. They had a good whole food lunch and great social interactions at work. They got home. They were stoked. They had so much energy. They played with their kids. They socialized with their wife. They had a very great evening at home reading, and they listened to podcasts while doing the dishes, and then they did yoga before going to bed. And I think the thing is it's just like, it's okay to give ourselves permission to like maybe do that sometimes, but it's okay to give ourselves permission to just not do that sometimes. Yeah, there's just waves and ebbs and flows to all this stuff, and it's not always going to look this way. And that's why it was so important for me going to Busch Gardens, like to give myself permission to not want to do it because I wanted to separate that stress. I think I thought leading up to it, it I have to keep citing my wife because she's the one who's chronically around me. And if she can see that I'm stressed out about going on these rides, she's going to look at me and say, good job going, not like good job being stressed out on those rides, or good job being stressed out about going on those rides, A plus. But it wasn't, it just doesn't work that way. And I have to be the one to give myself permission to do or not do something. Again, I'm a 35-year-old grown ass man. I'm going to do what I want or not what I want. And I'm going to do what I want or not do what I don't want. And when I kind of just clicked when we were in Florida, I was like, okay, I don't need to be stressed out about this. Okay, I don't need to go on these rides. Okay. And I think because I gave myself that permission and I alleviated that stress leading up to it and I was regulating properly, I was in a better state to go on those rides. And then on the rides, I was testing those other things, saying out loud, I'm excited when I was freaked out of my mind, doing that breathing strategy. Um, and doing that, I don't know, 3 or 4 times. Even just doing it right now kind of helps settle me down. It's pretty sick. And yeah, I think, also I've like heavily reduced my caffeine and coffee consumption. I drink maybe 1 or 2 coffees or lattes, whatever, a week. And now I drink more matcha and mud water. And that's probably helps too quite a bit. Yeah, but it's just kind of about, I think, just like, again, trying to get better. You don't even have to try to get better. Like it's kind of up to however you want to live your life. But I think I know I'm going to have kids one day and I know I'm going to want to, I don't know, like let them see that one, it's okay to have a hard time with things. And two, it's okay to not do things that are scary. And three, it's also okay to do hard things. It's actually good. It's good to do hard things. But you get to decide what hard things are like worth doing and what ones are not worth doing. That's not the same for everybody. And let them see like, their dad can do that stuff too, or not do that stuff. And I guess at the end of the day, I want my kids to just like properly regulate threats and scary things and then experience things accordingly, hopefully. So yeah, that's kind of how I went about that Busch Garden stuff. It was just so, I can just look back at that day. I still feel kind of anxious. Like I can remember that feeling. And then I remember feeling just exhausted at the end of the day. Like I remember I was like, okay, I think I can go on this ride. I'm going to get with you in line. I'm going to go there. Probably if I'm at the front of the line, I'm going to go in it. Anyway, we didn't do it. I don't know if I said this. We didn't do that last coaster because there wasn't enough time left in the day. It was like an hour to get through, and they're going to shut it down for fireworks that night. So I was like, I don't even know if we're going to get through. So we went and had pizza instead. But um, yeah, it's just something I'm trying to, I think, get better at, is just help myself understand like, oh, it's scary, but it's not dangerous. Those are different things. Those can be different things. That's scary, but it's not dangerous. That's dangerous. Probably should be a little scary. And just saying about about us. That's a general comment about a unstated specific maybe situation or threat. And yeah, it's just such a cool thing. That's something I really like, is like finding little tidbits out there, whether it's learning about nervous systems, learning about Wim Hof, learning about saying I'm excited, but implementing these things and seeing what works and doesn't work. Uh, because at the end of the day, again, especially as I'm 35, I'm getting closer. I mean, who knows? You never know when the midpoint of your life is. We always kind of think like 40 is, maybe 45. But as I'm approaching like that midpoint thing, is there's really like two big things. Is one, I don't want to be scared of things that aren't dangerous. And two, I don't want to feel negative about my body. That's a whole nother thing. I've always looked at my body. I've typically been a larger body composition, and I've always looked at that negatively. And, I think something clicked maybe 1 or 2 years ago, and I said, like, who cares? No one's gonna look at me and be like, oh, you feel bad about the size your body's at? Good job, bro. No one cares. In fact, people kind of love when people have larger body compositions and they're confident. People love those people. People are jealous of those people. And I mean, I'm not necessarily the most confident about it, but I am just like, yo, there's nothing immoral about your body size. I know people might even listen to this and say, yes, there is. You have a higher chance of all-cause mortality. Sure, which is true, but you have a higher chance of all-cause mortality if you drive your car instead of taking the bus. You have a higher chance of all-cause mortality when you text on your phone than you do, probably as much as you do texting on your phone, as you do being having a larger body composition. And so I just take like everything moral and out of it, everything ethical, and just say my body's good. And your body gets the composition increases when you ingest more calories. And I think like that means your body's doing something good. Like, why would you look at your body when it's processing those calories properly? Why would you look at that and be like, this sucks. I hate this. I hate my body. Like, your body is you, and your body is a gift. It's the only one you have. The Bible calls it a temple of the Holy Spirit, which that in itself is such a huge statement, such a huge spiritual statement, that our physical bodies are the temple of the Holy Spirit. Why would we not look at that and just be positive and thankful and gracious to it? Because again, God created our bodies to increase and decrease in body composition as calories increase and decrease throughout, throughout our life cycles. And it's like, man, who cares? Like, if my body's a little bit bigger, awesome. If my body's not, awesome. I give myself permission to eat whatever I want. Whatever I want, I'm going to eat. There's no limit. There's no whatever. And honestly, it's through that I've actually reduced the number of things I eat. Just like getting permission and being like more positive, like, yeah, I can eat whatever I want. Kind of makes me go like, oh yeah, and I want to eat this today. And yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. But those are probably the two biggest things the last couple of years, is responding to stress, regulating my nervous system, and like positively viewing my body, because I have no idea what my body's going to look like. I'm 35 now. I have no idea what the next 35 years holds in its entirety. And so I'm going to view my body positively, because you literally know what happens. You get in a car accident. I don't know. I keep referring to car accidents in terms of being safe and all-cause mortality, but you could get into a debilitating car accident and lose your ability to walk. And I don't want that to happen and be like, oh, I'm going to be negative about this. My body sucks. It doesn't. It's like, your bodies are amazing. Temples of the Holy Spirit. And yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm just trying to do these things is like go about them in a more positive way. And it's almost like there's a term called split testing where you have two things and you make one change between the two of them, and you do them both and you see which one gets better responses. Usually split testing is like a website thing when you get traffic coming in, you see which one has better responses. But I kind of try split testing life a little bit. It's like, okay, here's a scenario. Here's my two options. I'm going to pick one and see how it goes. And then maybe another time I'll pick the other one and see how it goes. And I think just I want to see like how, not even optimally, like people talk about optimizing, biohacking, living forever. It's not even really about that. I think it's actually more important. Like, shout out Ricky Gervais, who, probably one of the most famous um, atheists out there. He's like, he said something that resonated with me because he said, because I'm an atheist, I think this is all I've got. I think when you die, you go on the ground. There's no conscious experience after that. Like when you die, that is it for you. And that leaves me living every day to the fullest. I make sure I have an amazing day every single day. And I think as Christians, we look at life and we attach, like, because there's heaven, because there's an end coming, because there's a post physical life coming, we think like, oh, I just need to get through this. Thing sucks. Everything sucks. It's all evil. It's all terrible. And I just need to get through this to get to something great, which is like, I understand how people get there, but I think this is a gift God's given us that he wants us to live to the fullest and maximize. And why would we not get the most out of this thing? He doesn't want us just sitting around waiting for that next period of heaven to come. That's slothfulness. That's laziness. He wants us to we're temples of his Holy Spirit, and he created us as these mobile RVs of the Holy Spirit. So his Holy Spirit could go out and interact with other people in ways it wouldn't have been able to when it was only contained within the temple. And I think and there's just such a difference when you meet a Christian who's like, life sucks, I hate Trudeau and rah, rah, rah. It's like, yeesh, why would anyone listen to your worldview about anything? But if you meet someone, don't even have to be Christian. If you meet someone who's like, I'm happy and, I'm making the most of life, you don't be happy all the time, but someone's just generally like positive, it kind of makes you stop and go like, oh, what makes them tick? What makes them operate in this way that life is like good? Because I don't see this with a lot of people. And I think it's how I want to just like live my life. Life's not always gonna be happy, and things aren't always gonna be happening that make you happy. There's gonna be things that make you sad. The book of Ecclesiastes says like there's a time to mourn and there's a time to laugh. And I think a big part of this human bodily experience is about like really experiencing all of that. And I don't want to say taking away morality, like morality is a hugely important thing, but I think we attach too much morality to certain reactions towards this human experience. We attach too much morality towards riding on rides. We attach too much morality towards eating food. We attach too much morality towards body composition. We attach too much morality towards sexuality. We attach too much morality towards what even else? Even how about how much you're on your phone? We attach too much morality to that. Like, yeah, there's studies that say like the dopamine fix is like way too crazy and it is like bad for us. But it's like, if you attach this moral compass on it that makes you feel worse about it, like, you're going to spend time on your phone one way or another, unless you ditch it and go for a flip phone. Mad respect if you do. But like, why attach a moral thing to it? Like, if you want to spend time on your phone, spend time on your phone. If you don't, then don't. But just like own your choice. I think at the end of the day, own your choice, whatever it is, because who cares what anyone else thinks about it? Probably nobody cares about it. Nobody cares. And this is probably maybe a sad thing, but it's kind of this beautiful thing. Like, you don't have to answer anyone how much time you spend on your phone. You have to answer anyone, and you do answer to people for certain actions, 100%. I believe there's like a moral law, 100%. But I think we attach too much morality to where that moral law does not exist. I think like when it comes to my relationship with my body and food, like it's not like this hedonistic, I'm going to just eat everything I can because I want to feel this feeling of full and I want my body composition to be as large as possible. It's way more emotional, way less mental, and way less like, yeah, evil, I think, than we associate with it sometimes. But also shame on us. We're the ones that watch the show Hoarders. We're the ones that watch Love is Blind and get like, ooh, spicy when someone's like cheating on someone else. And then it's like, oh, like, why would we not attach similar moral lenses to things in our own life when we're attaching it to other people when we just should not care? We should not watch Hoarders. We should not watch some of these shows. I mean, I do. I watch clips of Hoarders on YouTube. I watch Love is Blind. I watch Survivor. People lie to each other. But you kind of have to, I think we just need to operate at a higher meta level where we're just trying to get the most out of this human experience rather than like on the ground level, like taking it for what it's worth. I think you miss something when you do that. I don't know if you can really change that overnight or not, but I think that's like pretty important. Like split testing life, wondering what we want to do, how do we get stuff out of this? It's pretty important. So anyway, guys, that's my experience at Busch Gardens and how I processed it and went through it. I don't know if you guys love amusement rides or not, but let me know. Are there similar things that you've gone through or you perceived and then came out the other side and you look back and said, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be? And then it went on to help fuel other things in the future and properly regulate them and associate them. I think that's something I'm really curious about. And, I think too, like, let me know, reach out and let me know what's a really important thing that you have experienced or like a shift in your mind that has resulted in a more positive life experience for you. Like whether it's your perception of your body, and sometimes like when I decided to be more positive about my body, it didn't happen overnight, but I just started saying like, no, when I'm feeling negative about my body, I'm going to pause. Like, no, I'm going to overtly think, cognitively think, or verbally state that my body's good, my body's great, I love it, whatever, and just like to start changing it. So what are like conscious decisions that you are making or you have made to help adjust that stuff in your own life? Anyway, guys, love you. Thanks for listening. Catch you next time. Peace. Guys, thanks for watching or listening to this episode. I so appreciate it. You can get a hold of me on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube. I'm available for speaking engagements. I'm available for coaching and consulting. And hey, I just love people. I love getting to know people. I love having positive impacts on one another. And so if this impacted you, if this impacted you in any way, make sure to reach out and let me know. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.